Okay guys, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go through the steps to properly update an iPod or an iPhone. Fortunately enough, my dad's iPhone is due for an upgrade or an update. So what happens is when you plug your phone in, so what we're going to do is we're going to plug the iPod in, and it'll pop up. When we get to iTunes, iTunes is going to prompt us to autoplay. We're just going to go ahead and exit out of that. We'll go ahead and what you're going to do is you're going to import those photos or whatnot. So it's going to give us an option to either download an update or download only for the iPod. So you can either go through right here and just click download and update and it'll start to download. Otherwise, if you close out of this and you select Chris's iPod, what you're going to do is there's this button that says update. So what you're going to do is you're going to click the update button. It's going to give you updating to 4-point delete will delete all your media. It's going to give them a warning that's going to delete all their media. So if they haven't transferred their purchases, then it's going to delete all those purchases. But once you transfer them, you can just resync them and you'll be good to go. So we'll just hit update. It's going to give you the information about the software. So you'll just hit next. Next again. You'll agree to the software. Now, if you look on the left hand side of iTunes, you'll see where it says downloads. So let's go ahead and click on downloads. And now you'll see that you have a software update. Focus. So now what we're going to wait is we're going to wait for that software update to complete. And then I'll show you the steps. Okay, so now our download's almost done. We're at 3, 2, 1. So now it's preparing the iPhone for restore. So these are a couple of the things that are going to happen during an update. First, it's going to back up the iPod. So we'll let that give it a couple of seconds. I'm not going to make you guys wait for each step, but I will show you guys a little bit of each different screen that you will see. So it's going to back it up first, which is good. Okay, so now that the backup's almost done, now if we go back to where it says devices, it's extracting software. Now it's preparing the iPod for restore. Now this is going to be true for any previous generation like iPod Touch 2G, iPhone 3G. There's not a difference between an update and a restore. So every time it's going to come back and just restore from a backup. But there is going to be a difference on the newer generation iPods and the newer generation iPhone. It's actually going to be an update versus a restore, but this is kind of what's going to happen. So we're waiting for an iPod. Now we're preparing the iPod software for restore. If you look at the device, an Apple symbol should pop up on the device with a loading bar. Eventually that loading bar will turn white, all the way fill up with white, and it'll restart the device. But right now the customer wants to wait on this bar to fill up and pay attention to iTunes, because iTunes is going to go through each step. Now you can tell where the iPod is along the restore process about what you see on the screen. So if you're waiting for a customer through a restore, what you want to do is have them tell you on which part of the update that it's going. So you'll just follow these directions and follow these steps and try to remember where they're at. It's going to go restoring iPod software, restoring iPod firmware, verifying, all those different steps, and then that way you can verify that it's progressing nicely. Again, I'm not going to make you guys wait through this because it could be like 20 minutes. But it seems to be going pretty quickly here. Okay, now this phase is almost done. As you can see the bars filling up. If you go back down to the device, you can see that the device is filling up as well. So if we come back up, now it's verifying the iPod software. And it's going to fill up, and that's just verifying that it's a good software version and that it's the right version. It's just verifying it with Apple that it's going to be good to go. This usually doesn't take a long time. Now on an iPhone, the only difference is going to be after this, you'll see restoring iPhone firmware and verifying iPhone firmware. So you can see as this fills up, the iPod is almost filled up as well. So now it's still verifying iPod restore. While the meter bar still fills up on the bottom of the device, as you can see here. It's almost done. Now this is probably the most important part. Once the iPhone or iPod restore is complete, or the update is complete, it's going to give you a prompt. Oh, see, now it's restoring the firmware. So, like I said, this will do it for the iPhone as well. Sometimes these don't take as long time, but sometimes they will. So it's going to go through each one of these steps. So now it says, your iPod has been restored back to factory settings and is restarting. Please leave your iPod connected. It will appear in iTunes. If you look back, now it's just a regular reboot mode. Basically, it's kind of rebooting, and it's going to just reboot the software and kind of redo itself. You want to make sure you tell the customers to leave their iPod plugged in. If they unplug it at this point, it's going to restore their device as new. Right now, this loading bar right now, that's the backup. What that's doing is it's putting the backup right back onto the phone. So as you can see it pushing up. So now you see the connect to iTunes symbol. That's standard. Once iTunes recognizes the device again, you'll see this option. You either get an option to set it up as a new iPod, which is a very good choice, whether it's an iPod or an iPhone, if you're restoring it because of software issues. If you're just if you're just restoring it because of whatever reason, you can restore from a backup. You'll also get this setup if you're updating to a new software, so from 4.1 to 4.2 like we were, or it's good to do a backup if the device has just been replaced and we need to restore it. Again, if we click on here, it'll show us all of our backups. It'll actually show all my iPhone's backups as well, and the iPad backups. But we'll go ahead and leave it as Chris's iPod, and then go ahead and hit continue. So now it's restoring the iPod Touch from a backup. On the phone, it'll actually say restore in progress, restore complete, and then you'll look and you'll get that message again. The settings for your iPod have been restored. Please leave your iPod connected. It will appear in iTunes window after it restarts. Again, if we look back down, the iPod is restarting again. Now, this is just going to do the backup. If we really want to put in music again, once it pops back up in iTunes, we have to resync it with iTunes. Which means once it pops back up, we'll have to go through the apps. And now it's preparing to sync. Hopefully my computer will work. Okay, here we go. So now it's preparing to sync. So it's going to try to automatically sync it just to do a quick backup, stuff like that. But you'll want to go back through and hit sync apps again, sync music again, sync movies again, and go back through each one of the little things and resync everything, including the contacts, calendars, all that type of stuff. Because if you don't, none of that stuff will get synced. So you might make sure that all this stuff is checked to synced. Now, I actually remembered that previously before the update, I was actually syncing my contacts. If it doesn't remember that, you just have to go back through and make sure that it's still syncing it, all that stuff. Otherwise, you should be good to go, and your update or restore is complete.